Naiji suffer from, not suffer, but the moodiness is part of being a Naiji. It's something that they have to deal with and account for as part of their nature. So moodiness, I guess you could associate with pretty much all of the Jez powers, and that's because of the flex factor. So the flex factor just seems moody because it sort of swings one way, then swings the other. It's never directly on. Z and Zai in different ways are directly on some sort of line, but Ji and Zhai are not. They're always flexing one way or the other. For example, like with Zhai, it's either jaded or idealistic. With Ji, it's butter or it's baleful. It's never just neutral, not unless it's bringing in the Zez power. Okay. So Ji tends to be seen as a little more moody than Zhai. Zhai is sometimes seen a bit more as pouty, although both can be moody. It's only that Ji tends to be a bit more overt in that it's designed to communicate, so it's letting the world know it's displeased. So when it's actually feeling happy, it like goes around telling everyone, I'm happy. And then when it's displeased, it goes around telling people, verbally or non-verbally, that I'm not happy. So the moodiness of the Naiji is something that both the Naiji and the environment tend to be rather aware of consciously. Once you actually know how to read Zhai, it's amazing that people could miss how Zhai does this as well, because it's so palpable. But even people who don't know how to read tend to actually note Ji. For example, when Ji is simmering like it's not pleased, people tend to get nervous. And this is all Ji mojos. Actually, it's all Ji yujos, even like Ni Zai or Zai Ni. If the Ji looks annoyed, the room will be alerted, because Ji is designed by its nature to express, I'm annoyed. And humans are designed to understand when humans are annoyed, that means the situation just got volatile. By definition, the situation has now become volatile. Okay, so there is the innate flex factor of Ji. Now we're going to bring in sort of why it's so intense with the Naiji. First of all, in the directive romantics, it's going to be more notable than in the directive centralists. And this is because it's attached to a interpretive power. The Nai gives it a original quality, an out of nowhere quality. So it has the same thing with flex factor, but it also gets thrown off because, or people get thrown off, both the individual who's experiencing the moodiness and the people who are observing the moodiness take hold of the person. With Nai, for both the directive romantics, it can come on even them all of a sudden, and even they are not aware why all of a sudden they're unhappy. The flex factor just does that. I'm unhappy or I'm happy. But with Nai being the 8th position on the SS index, there can be a very unknown, mysterious quality to when the moods come and go. So there's a flex factor quality innately, but when they come and go seems very mysterious. And now we get to Nai in general, and specifically the Nai GS alpha, it's driven. There's an extreme intensity with this flex factor. So the same thing that normally when you see someone that's G sort of like vibrating, like they don't seem okay, and it can actually be a good thing, because G, when it's happy, is going to make noise. It's going to make people aware that I'm pleased with this. For example, if I have a friend who pleases me, I'm going to voice it. In fact, if you don't like my friend, for example, you're going to have to account for me. because my G flexes like that. I actually get worked up, like I like my friend's performance or something they did. I'm going to get very, very excited. That's an energy that will develop, that'll just flex out. Also, for example, if something just goes wrong, my G will become displeased. But when the Ni is there, it's attached to that visionary drive. So it's very common for a Ni G, when the flex factor goes towards being happy, they get rather childlike exuberant. The Ni brings a very just like childlike, just raw intensity to it. But then when they're displeased, or they want something to go a different way, it gets this drivenness, sometimes obsessive quality to it that people find unnerving. So there's the normal flex factor unnerving, and then there's flex factor powered by visionary drive. Both the environment and the individual person, the Ni-G, this is going to be tremendous mood swings on those two alone. Another thing that sort of makes the mood swings seem rather dramatic for the Ni-G, which is the moodiness, is actually the Zai, which, as mentioned in another section with Faux Zen, is used to actually sort of keep this down to a degree. But it actually contributes in a large way to actually Ni-G being even more moody, mercurial, storm-like. Is the Zai gets very, very good at both being hardcore and making 49-51 decisions. So there then becomes a tremendous suddenness to the moodiness. This is actually used by many Ni-G actors, for example, and politicians and debaters to great effect. Is not only is there a natural flex factor, which is moody, then the intensity of the visionary drive. There's a click, 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 click. It can be highly honed to where, even not intentionally, instinctual, the Ni-G just knows themselves very well. They know how they feel on things, the principles of them, so that when it goes one way or the other, not only is it very flexible, meaning it has a lot of passion given to it, good or bad. Not only is it very intense because of the Ni, there's very little lag time, and it corners like a super race car, so that it was displeased and it was getting very angry and was ratcheting itself up into like mega preacher, I'm gonna beat you the fuck down mode, and then the person capitulates in the proper way, and the Zai knows already the principle of such engagements and calls off instantly, just like it was a full throttle, full tilt, like tsunami of fucking death, and then it just stopped. It may even stop, it may even switch into being conciliatory with the equal intensity that it was actually trying to take the person's head off, physically or verbally. All of a sudden the person gave, and then that means, oh, we can be friends now, so it just switches off. That suddenness is also something that is very alarming to other people, and actually even alarms the Ni-G. They often walk away from things like that, like, that's weird. Like, it's weird, like I was so worked up and now I'm not. And then it comes back. We can hold tempers, we can be angry at someone for forever. But that may not be sustainable in life. So the Zai just puts that on chill. But it's right there. And then when the thing comes up where that person may actually show up in a coffee shop or something, this person you really can't stand for some reason, or you think is evil and needs to be called out, and now the opportunity presents itself, instant. Like all of a sudden this storm of like 20 years of I'm ready to actually call this villain out will just instantly come out of nowhere. And that actually has a lot to do with Zai in this case, in that these storms are very intense, they come out of nowhere, but they can be held. The Zai can actually compartmentalize these storms and just sort of like open up storm packages. Sometimes this is done voluntarily, sometimes involuntarily by the Ni-G. But either way, that adds to like this whoa factor that ironically can make Ni-G sometimes Zai up even more. When they actually realize what happens when they release some of their Zai valves of storm, little collections, that go, holy crap, and they just put more Zai bolts on. What else? V. Ni-G, like all Ni Alpha, actually have a antagonistic stance towards the environment. you're basically surrounded like Superman, and you're born in the city or world of kryptonite. It really sucks. And every now and then you actually walk into a non-kryptonite part of the city briefly, and you actually feel what it's like to be Superman, and then you lose it again. So it's very, very annoying. So that's one thing. Let's talk about that disposition. When Naiji get really worked up, when they fetish, as many people do when they go into keening, that tends to be warp frenzy for a Naiji. So Naiji can go from being almost catatonic, particularly if they're distracted or they're actually scared. Either way, they'll be extremely still. But a Naiji, when they're orating, when they're in preacher mode, or when they're in physical mode, when they're in physical demonstration mode, basically warp frenzy, I'm going to use my body as a physical demonstration of what I believe. That also is very alarming, because a lot of people are moody but don't move their bodies. A lot of people are moody but don't actually express their anger, don't actually chastise someone for like 6 hours straight and actually able to see all your weaknesses, don't actually get out of their chair and say, move or I'm going to move you. You know what I mean? Or just start walking out to the barn and moving boxes because they're going to start setting up that Ninja Warrior obstacle course. I mean, so the suddenness will come, but then they'll actually go from no activity to fanatic activity. So there's all these huge switches in the Naiji psyche, and you just have to learn to roll with it. But moodiness is part of the math. And that's important because another one too is actually just to kind of sum them all up is the deference. Just this, that the moodiness, the volatility, not in a negative sense in this case, but just that intense passions and the highs and the lows, they're actually part of a Naiji reaching maximum performance. It's part of our ability to perform and achieve. And it takes us to new heights. For example, that song like Nulo, that's a very Naiji kind of song where you spring from these lows to these super highs, and you have to just sort of develop a stomach and nerve to deal with that and learn how to serve it, because that's part of being a Naiji. And to try to hold in place that incredible swings, all you're doing is going to be spending your entire life actually trying to hold on to something that can't be held on to. And you'll get nowhere and be tired all the time. What else? The moodiness, needs to be mentioned, is a major contributor to why Naiji misread themselves. They don't like this about themselves. They want to control it, and it bothers them about themselves a great deal.